Hi, I'm Surbhi, and today I'm with one of my admired personality who has left a long-lasting impression on the way I lead my personal and professional life. His life philosophies are very striking, very applicable, and catch the mind of many professionals or to-be professionals. His thoughts as well as his life journey has changed thinking of many individuals essentially as they are relatable. Many motivational speakers talk. I have observed examples of the great personalities are put forth that many a times look far-fetched and difficult to relate to. Let me take this opportunity to introduce Mr. Charudutt Katare, a senior pharma professional who worked for more than 27 years at various vantage positions, including being a vice president at just 37, then a senior vice president at 40, and then scaling to become an associate president of a reputed pharmaceutical company. Besides his bachelor's degree in pharmacy and then an MBA degree in marketing, he has pursued corporate executive programs, essentially capstone and corporate entrepreneurship at IIM Ahmedabad and IIM Bangalore. His resume and professional career is his contribution towards the scaling vision and results imparted to many companies he worked with and to his colleagues operational at every level of management. He was associated to MBA institutes as unique pedagogy of guest lecturer as well as worked as a mentor to some award-winning NGOs, including those for women empowerment. Why I said his life story and experience is relatable, for he comes from a modest family background. He raised himself to the level of being called by the society successful, both personally and professionally. He designed his retirement. His concept of retiring means not working for anyone else at the age of 50, scaling probably every vantage position at a young age and ensuring the intended net worth value. His son has completed his graduation from world's #1 university in his elected academic major and now works with a company featuring amongst the top 5 of the world. His life journey is a true example of how the concepts of life leadership, which he strongly propagates, can help those looking to achieve heights in personal and professional life. He has maintained strict daily routines post his retirement and beautifully managed his work-life balance. His 45 to 60 minutes daily workout is one of his facets of his daily routines, so much so that if he fails going to gym on a particular day, he does his scheduled workout at home so not to miss the routine. His definition of leisure encompasses the weekend cooking with and for family, and as he says, I owe to my family minimum 1 international and 1 domestic vacation every year. We are at one of his many beautiful apartments on the 27th floor facing lush mountain range, discussing the concept of life leadership, a reflection of true you under the narrative carrying the burden of 7 regrets on a deathbed. Welcome Charu sir, it's an honor to do this podcast with you and thank you so much for having me on board. So without any further ado, let's get going.
Surbhi, at the very outset, let me thank you for this wonderful introduction and most importantly for this podcast invite. Surbhi, most of us unfortunately accept whatever is being served in life, expecting that the things would change, the circumstances would change, and you will appreciate most of the times such things never happen. I feel that they go through a life journey which I say as born by default, lived by default, and died by default.
Agree.
Imagine a person who lives such kind of life journey, who is born by default, lived by default, and died by default, always will struggle to exist when it comes to professional and personal life. In professional life, Surbhi, you will appreciate that if you're struggling to exist, struggling to get noticed, there are chances that you will be replaced and nobody will repent about it. But when it comes to personal life, imagine you struggling to exist, the kind of life journey, Surbhi, you go through is something which I call as very painful and very traumatic one. And I personally feel life is a true reflection of what we want to see ourselves as. My question to you, Surbhi, is that when was the last time that you saw your own reflection genuinely? Because if you have done that, Surbhi, it will always give you the truth. It will always give you that reflection which has been there. And if the reflection is saying to you, Surbi, that you need change. Believe me or not, you are progressing and you are alive. Till the age of 8 and 10, I don't think this thought crossed my mind or our mind that we came from a poor background. In fact, most of my friends to whom along with whom I used to play came from an upper middle class or a middle class background. And whenever they used to come and play along, they used to get their fancy toys, whether it was their fancy cars or whether it was their fancy train. And you will not believe, unknowingly, that I come from a very poor background. I used to carry an empty matchbox as my car to play along with them. I used to carry a wooden broken scale, which was my fancy train during those times. As I said, the thought never crossed my mind that there was a societal difference between me and my friends whom I used to play along. But having said this, as we were discussing about it, whenever we used to play along, just to compensate that I don't have a proper toy, I used to shout at the top of the voice while they used to zoom their cars and zoom their trains. And I used to shout just to compensate that I don't have a proper toy. And I remember during those times, few of our neighbors coming to my mother and expressing this aspect that Charu ko thoda sa dheere chillane ke liye boliye. Because if he does that, continues to do that, aage kuch hoga nahi pata nahi, but at least he will grow deaf when he will grow up. I had absolutely no remorse about the fact that I came from such a background.
So then what changed, Charu sir?
In fact, Surbi, while I started growing up, from my childhood to an adolescent phase, I suddenly realized that the people around, the relatives around, they started judging us, judging me, my family, essentially on a materialistic and monetary perspectives. This comparison about, every time, being onto a monetary perspective, on a materialistic perspective, went on, and they were trying to frame me and my family in a specific quality of life beyond which we can't progress. In fact, I consider always that all these incidences which were been there, these individuals who were posing this kind of questions, actually provided me with a trigger, a positive trigger, a reason to get up in the morning every single moment of time. And that's the reason, Surbi, I come very strongly to my first philosophy, which is very core to me. I completely believe, Surbi, that nobody in this world, nobody, I'm emphasizing on this aspect, nobody in this world ever intends to or will put money in your pocket. So Surbi, before you earn a lot of money, getting into company of those individuals who would preach you, who will teach you that money making is only for destined few. You should remain satisfied with whatever you have. When you come across such kind of individuals who will tell you that you are destined not to make money, you should be beware of such kind of individuals. Essentially because these are the same individuals, Surbi, who would tell you that monetary success is a relative phenomenon. According to me, monetary success has its own definition, not as per your and my convenience, but as per the statement which has been given by the society at large where we are living in. Only those, Surbi, who cannot progress professionally and personally in life, then conveniently say that monetary success or money making is a relative phenomenon. The importance of money, Surbi, is only understood when you are in dire needs of that.
Absolutely.
I remember of interacting some 3 weeks or 4 weeks back with an engineering student who wanted to pay her third year fees, which was just merely 40,000 rupees. Her parents cannot afford her education. She was struggling to pay that 40,000 rupees. Go ask importance of money to her. Let's say, God forbid, Surbi, someone close to your family needs to undergo a bypass surgery, which is going to cost 10 lakh rupees, and you don't have that 10 lakh rupees. Go ask your closest of the friend. Go ask your closest of the relative. You will understand the importance of money. I completely therefore believe into this aspect that money making is an art. Growing it is a skill. A skill which has been mastered by only few. I remember at an age of 32, my then company, when I became a marketing manager, they gave me my first car, to be very frank.
Wow.
And
how did that feel, having your first
it
car?
It did feel great, to be very frank, because I always believe there are times, moments, milestones which you should celebrate. Not celebrate with many people, but celebrate within the family. So as I said, I was very happy having that. But as you know, coming from a background, I never knew how to drive a car. So that's the reason from the day one, I had kept a driver. This was an occasion, I think Diwali festivals were going on, and my father used to go to a relative every year for the Bhai Dooj. But that place was very far off from my house, and that's the reason. In fact, it was so far off, it used to take 1 hour, whereby he has to take a rick, then a train, then a bus, and then repeat the entire sequence coming back home. So I requested my father, since incidentally the driver was waiting and he had nothing to do, I said, why don't you take the car? It's but obvious that you will ask for that. My father completely at that moment of time refused taking the car. But I insisted, and that's the reason he took the car. When he came back, Surabhi, believe me or not, he was very upset. I asked him why he was upset about and what he was upset about. Did the driver didn't drive it right? Or was it that he was rash driving? Whether he met with an accident? He said no, it was never related to any of these reasons. So I asked then what happened? He said, this was exactly the reason, Charu, I was not going to take the car. I said, what happened? You have to tell me about it. He said, when he entered the complex of that relative and opened the door, that moment, that relative rushed down and expressed to my father, oh, it's your car. I thought it was my son's car. How in the world, Surabhi, these are the statement, how in the world we could think that you or Charu can afford getting a car? I personally believe that if you don't have a genuine reason to get up in the morning, chasing your vision and passion becomes absolutely meaningless. So I would rather suggest to all the viewers that rather than indiscreetly chasing your vision and passion, chase that trigger, find that genuine reason to get up in the morning. That would be more meaningful, that would be more long lasting as an effect which would be there on his life. I have seen many people who have considered vision and passion as bargain hunting.
Bargain hunting?
Yeah. In fact, you would be surprised to know this concept is about shopping things at a discounted or free, at a free cost. You have gone many a times to the malls. Have you ever seen, Surabhi, that 2 kilo basmati rice के साथ 200 ग्राम vision free है? Or for that matter, have you ever found that 2 liter तेल के साथ there is 200 ml passion free है?
नहीं.
Vision and passion cannot be treated like a New Year resolution, Surabhi. And such kind of individuals who don't have that positive trigger, that genuine reason to get up every single morning will always postpone chasing their visions and passions in life. Let me discuss with you a very interesting phenomenon, that is Newton's law of inertia. Newton's law of inertia states that any non-living thing, I emphasize, he said, any non-living thing will continue to remain in a state of constancy, or what we call a state of inertia, till the time there is an external force which will come and help it move in a particular direction. But Baba Newton ने बताया it was only for non-living things. I have seen so many individuals who have conveniently utilized their state of inertia or used this Newton's law of inertia in their professional and personal life, remaining into that state of constancy for a long period of time, expecting there would be an external force which will come and will eventually help them move in a particular direction. Imagine, Surbhi, you in your heydays of 25 to 45, being long into this state of inertia, expecting that either your seniors, either your colleagues or your family members will actually come to you and provide you that external force and help you move in a direction, is practically counting stars in a broad daylight. Most of the people know that there are huge differences between animals and humans. You will appreciate that.
Yes.
But there is one very common feature between animals and humans, is their response mechanism when it comes to the survival of these individuals or of these animals as well as humans. There are two mechanisms which are seen very commonly in survival mode. One is called as in flight mode, jahan pe if you see the enemy and you need to survive, you run away from the scene. The second one is called as in fight mode, a mode whereby you fight the enemy and survive the situation. But humans, over a period of time, with their evolution within larger cortex area, they were supposed to develop more response mechanism, better response mechanism, which were other than only for survival mode. They were supposed to bring in a more advanced mechanisms when it came to their stress-like situations. And stress-like situation can be as simple as what, Surbhi? Traffic mein aap atke hue for 3 hours. There is a lot of honking going on. It can be that stress. That can be called as stress.
Yes.
You are stuck in your career. You are not getting promotions. You are not getting increments. You are under tremendous stress. In today's world, sales-dominated world, marketing-dominated world, your sales targets are the biggest pressure.
Yeah.
And when you are under this kind of stress, you have to employ something which is better than flight mode and fight mode. The humans were supposed to be adapting themselves for this. In those stressful modes which have been there, the humans were supposed to bring in a more effective mode, which, as I said, the most convenient mode which they brought in was a freeze mode, which is normally seen in prey animals. And this freeze mode is essentially a mode whereby people conveniently stop thinking, stop acting, and consider whatever is served by life during that moment of time. I have seen many people, Surbhi, who conveniently use this state of inertia or this freeze mode when it comes to their heydays in their professional and personal life. And when they go through this kind of phenomena, expecting that an external force will come to them and help them move in a direction, a thing which never happens in their life. Surbhi, I completely believe that all of us, most of us, are born eagles. Whether we choose a life of living the entire life as an eagle by flying high, or for that matter, whether we choose the easier, convenient way of being a chicken, is a choice which is always there with individuals. According to me, over a period of time, many of us kill that part of eagle subconsciously or consciously over a period of life. And we choose the most convenient way of being or living a life of a chicken. Isn't it a big shame, Surbhi, that you're born eagle and you choose a life to live like a chicken? When you get into this state of inertia, it has been seen that you tend to surround yourself with individuals who would preach you, who would come to you and testify you that you were never destined to fly high as an eagle. In fact, once you get into that state of inertia, Surabhi, I personally feel, and when you surround yourself with such kind of negative brooders, eventually what happens is that you start looking at your life, professional and personal life, from a prism of prejudice. You think this is the way the life is. These individuals who are negative brooders will come to you and convince you and do this ruminative brooding about whatever the incidences which have gone wrong. So unfortunate. And that's the reason, Surabhi, it has been categorically said. I remember a statement made by George Washington. He said, at times, it is better to be alone rather than being into a bad company. And believe me or not, everybody goes through this state of inertia during their personal and professional. How long you remain in that state of inertia actually determines what heights you will achieve in life. In life, it is very important. And when you get into that state of inertia, how long do you remain in that state of inertia? What kind of people you surround yourself with? To whom and from whom do you take that wisdom and advice is very important. Because if you take advice from those, the way I said about negative brooders, they will convince you to remain in the comfort zone and not achieve anything in life, Surabhi. As I said, many people actually struggle to exist. What I said in our earlier section, that they are born by default, they live their life by default, and they die by default. Surabhi, one thing is for sure, our birth is always by default. I am sure you'll appreciate this fact. You have never chosen your parents. Your birth time was not chosen by you. That was also by default. When your birth is by default, there are many individuals who start thinking that their life also, which they are going to live, is going to be by default. Look at the aspect. Your birth is by default. You can't choose the place, you can't choose the parents, your parents, you can't choose the time of birth. The first step which you will take, Surabhi, you must have taken, I'm sure there must be somebody in your family who might have helped you take your first step as well. Now I'm going to talk about 90% of the population, not those brilliant individuals and talented individuals. You never decided in which school you would go, right? It was only your parents that they decided. So your birth was by default, your first step was by default, your school which you went also was by default. And as I said, we are talking about 90% of the population, not those most talented people. So many of them, the kind of marks which they get in school, the first college which they get, the first stream which they get, they pounce on that. So your college which was been selected was also by default. Again, I am emphasizing we are only focusing on this 90% of the population. So college mein by default, the marks which you got into the college, your parents said, अब ये काम कर लो, इतना अभी कर लिए, अब बड़े हो गए हो, so now अपने पैरों पे खड़े हो जाओ. So whatever was the first job, you decided to take that first job. So your first job was also by default. Now there is a statistics in India, Surabhi, that 93% of the people who get married are through arranged marriage. So even your marriage is by default. A person who has struggled in his college, struggled getting into his first company, and he gets into this habit of living his life by default. Imagine his progression in a corporate world also completely depends on his senior, because he can't carve his own path, he cannot justify for whatever the work which he's been doing, and that's the reason his promotions, his increments also are by default. A person, Surabhi, who is born by default, whose first step in life is by default, getting into which school is by default, which college by default, getting married by default, whether getting an increment by default. A person who depends and his entire life, as I said, born by default, lived by default, eventually will die by default. And such individuals who go through this phase of born by default, lived by default and died by default, every single decisions of them in life are controlled by somebody else, Surbi. And a person whose entire life has been controlled by somebody else, he gets into something what I call as a dependency trap. A periphery beyond which we can't take our own decisions. And Surbi, throughout my professional life, I have seen so many people who do not love seeing their own reflections. I have asked this question to so many of my colleagues, and you will be shocked with the kind of responses which I get from them, or which I got from them. I had asked a group product manager a simple question: can you see yourself as a vice president of our organization in the next 5 years? So a group product manager has to be a marketing manager, the next elevation, then an GM of a company, then an AVP of a company, vice president of a company. That's the process. Right. So I had asked him, can you see, because I could see talent in him. I could see in his reflection that he can be our future vice president. So I asked him this question, that can you see yourself growing from a group product manager to a vice president of our organization in the next 5 years? The next question which I asked to the same person was, can you see yourself going along with your family, spending 5 nights at Taj Kolaba in a suite room, which will be not more than 2.5 or 3 lakhs, a spend which will be somewhere around 15 lakhs. Can you see yourself spending this probably 4 years down the line, 5 years down the line? Can you see traveling yourself in a first class in next 4 or 5 years? And that individual got so petrified. He said, sir, आप क्या मजाक कर रहे हो क्या? Look at me. आपको कौन से एंगल से you can see me growing as a vice president in next 5 years? By the time of my retirement, अगर मैं GM भी बन जाऊं, तो बड़ी गनीमत है. Biggest reason for this struggle of existence, which I feel is fear of scale. Many people are not able to see themselves big in life, whether it is professionally or on their personal visions. And all those who struggle in their personal and professional life, what I call as born by default, lived by default and died by default, eventually fit themselves into ecosystem. I have seen most parents try searching their own non-accomplishment, what they want themselves to be, their unachieved self-desires in life to be brought up by their children. Good sense never prevails till the child never rises to their expectation. Mark my words, their expectations. The constant comparisons or competitiveness in the areas that were never their choice leads the individuals into black hole of impressing others. In this process, what we forget, Surbi, to impress the person within us, and never get into the trap of those kind of individuals who have spent their entire life into only impressing others. The constant comparisons or competitiveness in the areas that were never your choice actually leads into the black hole of impressing others. Surbi, in this process, we forget to impress the person within us, as we discussed earlier. Never make this your way of life, or else your existence, your purpose in life is always in danger. Beware of all those who worship positions and undervalue the responsibilities which come along with the positions. Once you start getting into this black hole which we were discussing about, suddenly you will realize that one thing which you forgot was to impress yourself. And a person who never ever impresses himself is a person who would never rise to the higher positions or rise professionally or personally to the heights which we are talking about.